I'd like to call this work session to order. Let's go around the room and identify ourselves for the record, please. Forrest, let's start with you, sir.
Forrest Dunbar.
Eric Crump. Pete Peterson.
John Weddleton.
Big training. And I got email from Suzanne. She can't be here, so Amanda, is the bridge open in case somebody calls in?
I can open it.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
Well,
It depends on what you tell us, doesn't it?
Thank you.
Okay, we have in front of us 2017-254.
Mayor's.
So who's doing that discussion? Are you going to leave the discussion on 254, or who's doing it?
This particular?
Well, 254 deals with $5.8 million.
That's the SAP.
Yeah.
So the mayor will get here in a moment, and then he will start, and then I will go forward.
Fine, we got time. Eric, you were really early.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
The record reflects that.
That's reflected. Hi, Mr. Mayor. Ready to start, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sir.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I wanted to thank you all for taking the time to get another update on SAP. There's a few things that I want to emphasize before we head into this meeting. First is that the municipal employees who have been working on this project have been exceptionally dedicated and put in incredible amounts of work and effort, and I think that when we have the occasion to thank them, we got to do that because they rise to the highest standards of public service. As a president of Bankers, makes me very proud to have people like that working for us.
I think, Mr. Mayor, we're planning on a little luncheon for him. That's what Barbara's working on. So
And a very fancy lunch, at the very least.
they work hard.
Yes. Also, I want to emphasize that this project has taken a long time. That when my administration came into office, we had expectations that some of the work product that existed would be useful moving ahead. That has proven to be not so. Very little of the effort that existed prior to our efforts has been salvageable. In fact, it consumed resources trying to understand whether there was anything we could salvage off the project. At this point, we are still plowing ahead. Our hope is that we will be complete, or at least able to go live prior to the last quarter, or for the last quarter of this year. And we're just going to continue with that expectation. People have relocated to City Hall. The lease over at Sunshine expired, and so we're doing everything we can to minimize costs moving ahead. And this is one of those situations where we are faced with choices that none of us wants to make, but have to be made because the alternatives are less palatable. So I just wanted to set the ground with those comments.
Mr. Mayor, on the chart you've got SAP history. You've got early 2012 removal of Black and Beach. You should add another line into there when they settled out of court so that we could not sue Black and Beach. That needs to be put in there, sir. Please continue.
I was just going to let Alden take over at this point. I'll stick around so I can answer questions if you have any.
Alden, sir?
Thank you, Assembly Chair Training. I just want to quickly, before I get into a dovetail, one, we appreciate using the assembly room downstairs to accommodate the vast majority of the move, and I would be certainly open as you're walking by on the first floor down there to always step into the old 155. That is the current testing room, and a lot of the final consultants and mini staff and trainers and testers are in there. So
How many people are working down there?
in that particular room, we've set up 45 machines at the moment. So we have 45. We've also taken over the old credit union building room, and I have people on 4 other floors as well. So we, as the mayor said, we've done everything we can to minimize our expense, no matter where that happens to be. And we've moved them all over here, and the last 2 people will move next week that are in the Sunshine Building. And we will be out of that building at the end of July as planned and budgeted to be able to do that. So we'll go through there. So referring to the presentation that I have here today, slide please. I always like to start off by trying to just show the diagram. I know we don't like to go into detail, but this system that we're installing here is a very large system. It replaces all of our payroll, all of our purchasing, all of our accounting, all of our HR functions across the municipality, including bringing in the 2 utilities. So it is a very large process and a very large project. In addition, we're trying to bring on the electronic content management that was very important to the assembly as well. So it has 19 modules across a variety of different things. So it is a large project, and I know I've shown this before, but I just want to reiterate all the things that we're doing and what we're trying to do. And this also replaces Kronos, and I know that was something that has a history of the municipality as well, to be able to do that. And all of those things with the different security aspects that we have out there, in the landscape. So we're trying to make sure we have a system that also addresses those kind of concerns.
Well, let me ask you one quick question. With PeopleSoft, we had people doing offline accounting on their own. And we made sure that doesn't happen again, because part of the problem was everybody had their own little system they used to access other things. So we made sure we're just going with SAP.
And at this particular point in time, yes, from the training, SAP is going to be our system, and that's been one of our huge challenges as we've done the monthly reports to you. Is the fact that approximately half the work that we've been doing has been outside of PeopleSoft because of the fact that it hasn't been updated since 2002, and the functionality just was not there, along with the Kronos issues that happened around 2010 and 11. So it is our goal here, which we need to maintain after we go live, is that this is our system, and we need to put our efforts into the one system. We have 5 different time recording systems across the municipality right now, and this is going to roll all those into one. So we are trying to consolidate, become more efficient, and do it in a variety of different ways.
And those time accounting things are really critical. One of the most important functions we have is, as an employer, is to make sure our employees are compensated for the work that they do.
Accurately done.
And we've spent an inordinate amount of time and effort to ensure that. In fact, we just finished up today. We did a parallel payroll cycle that we've been educating you on. We did 3 separate payroll cycles. Very successful, and covered a variety of different things that we've been able to fix and ensure that those issues are not going to be problems when we do go live. So we've spent a lot of time on that. We're currently in testing on the HCM, which includes payroll again, and they're running almost 5,000 additional scripts and employees through to ensure that the system that we're developing matches up to not only our union contracts, but also the business processes that go along with that. And as also you're aware, the Kronos clocks are going away. We're installing 65 new Kava clocks, both at the utilities that have never had to clock in and out in the past as well.
John?
Well, I share that concern about people actually switching over, because we approved a contract for the police that was over $100,000 so they can develop a separate system to do their financial stuff. And I asked at that point, why aren't they using SAP? And basically they said, we don't trust it. So we're already
Trying to get more of that.
spending money on workaround.
But SAP wasn't available for them at that point.
Well, this is
in
to
time.
start next year. We'll be able to do that. So it's for after SAP goes live.
The goal here is to use this system, and if the system has been designed and blueprint, remember it's been going on for 6 years now, if there needs to be changes or tweaks to change it to the system, to try to keep, the advantage of SAP is in one integrated system. That's the efficiency. Anybody who goes off and does their own thing takes a little bit away from the efficiency that the system brings.
Some of these decisions were made prior to us coming on board. We're just stuck on those train tracks.
I understand that, but once it gets going, we spend $81 million or so. You gotta get people to use it. That's gonna be the challenge.
81,500,000 and growing, so.
And it's, I mean, but that's, I'm sure you're thinking about that, but they're used to their spreadsheets, and they're busy and in a hurry, and they need this thing tomorrow, or we could learn SAP. And I'm afraid that.
Well, I can certainly tell you, we've spent a great deal of time on the 50% currently that are using spreadsheets to incorporate the functionality and the efficiency of those spreadsheets into the system. And we need to just reiterate to them on an ongoing basis that they need to use the system for its functionality. And if it's not performing an issue or a function they need, then we'll deal with it in the system, not
delete
separate.
Excel from every computer.
You could write a procedure for this as relative to using spreadsheets, so it will not be used.
Try to do
You've got to
we
use
call them
SAP.
workarounds. Is what we want to minimize the workarounds as much as possible.
Please continue on.
Let's go on to the next slide here. This has been the history slide that we have, and we'll certainly update it, Mr. Craney, with regards to your comment. But just a quick history here for everybody. You know, the project kind of started in 2011 with our initial system implementer. Cost was estimated to be less than $10 million and done in 18 months. That was pie in the sky at that point in time. Black and Beach was removed. We do not have, there was a settlement, did not have the capability of sealing, as you mentioned. Peloton was brought in at that point in time to try to fix the issues and so forth that was going on. That went on for quite a bit of time with little success in going towards go live efforts. The Assembly brought on Zico Consulting as an external auditor in late 2014. SAP was hired to do a full-blown audit where we were at that particular point, but that was already 4 years in and almost $45 to $50 million worth of effort at that point in time when that happened. The new administration came in the summer of 2015. We took a pause to have a quick evaluation of where we were at. We had the external committee of members of the municipality come in. Their recommendation, which was accepted, was to continue down the process with SAP. We finished the blueprinting phase. If you remember, there's a blueprinting, a development, a testing, and then a go live support phase. We finished the blueprinting phase last April. As we then entered into the design phase, which completed around the 1st of this year, late December, 1st of this year. We then have started and went through 3 different system integration testing. First one occurred in January-February time period. The second one was April and through June time period. The great news is, I think since the last time we met, we began SIT 3, which is our last SIT this last Monday, so July 10th. And I'll get to the schedule here in a little bit, but we have begun it, and as I mentioned, if you were to go downstairs, you'd see them all. I was there this morning cranking through a variety of test scripts and so forth. I'm probably one of the biggest pessimists around, but things are actually going pretty good this week. The response I've been getting from them is, as we would expect, every time you go through it, your start should be better. So they are cautiously optimistic that they're working through those, but we did begin the SIT 3 testing phase this week.
Question with some members. This is all go ahead. You know, you wonder why back in mid-11, when they started this, they didn't get with SAP and use them as implementers. You know,
I think
you'd think they would have done it. Because when Elvie and I called San Diego, we found numerous problems that San Diego had. They finally moved to SAP. Had the administration done their homework, not your administration, the last one, we wouldn't be where we are today.
As the mayor mentioned earlier, unfortunately, I think it's probably always easier to start with a clean slate than to try to take what somebody else has done and modify it and manipulate it. That has had certainly an impact on some of our timelines and time frames that we've gone through. But I can tell you we pretty much did everything over the next slide, which is the finance slide, I would say, Mr. Croft, that we have actually written anything off. This has all been put on a financing plan where with no repayments at this point until the system actually goes live, and then it'll be a part of the operating budget that you and the mayor will be working through going forward.
Well, I know we had to spend it, but what was not useful?
About $45 or $50 million.
Between 45 and 50 million, yes. And that's approximately when I came on board, we were about that amount of spending at that point in time.
I remember the problem was the data was just, it was supposed to be data we could bring in the system, it just wasn't there. It wasn't reliable to bring it in. You guys had numerous problems with that data.
I
Wasted a lot of money.
I can certainly tell you with the complexity and what I've seen in the little bit less than 2 years that I have been here, there was no chance for them ever to go live ever before, both within the configuration of the system and the formatting that the data was in at that point in time. There was literally no opportunity for success, given the complexity of what we're talking about in this particular system. It was just never possible, and the amount of effort that's been put in. So before you right now on this particular slide, this was as of a day or two ago. This is the current, I would call it this financial summary of the report. The bottom left-hand corner there, at this point in time, a little over $75.6 million has been appropriated by the administration over the course of those 6 years since we've been there. Only 25 million of that has been since Mayor Berkowitz has been with the administration. The other almost 50 million was, as we mentioned, that 45 and 50 million was all done before we got here. So about that 25 million number is where we're at, and that was through March of this particular time period. As you can see there, and I won't go into great detail, these are the ones, the vendors that we have that are currently active, and whether they have an appropriation, a PO that we've issued against it, what's been invoiced so far, and what's been come to spend. The only point I bring up is, Zig does bring this up, and if you look at the SAP realization one, you'll see the 8.5 million that's over there. As we mentioned, our invoicing, through a variety of reasons, has been significantly behind. It's been encumbered, it's just that we haven't, and we are beginning again to take a real strong stance at looking at that, and I would expect that money in the near future here over the next few months to be spent down, but it has been encumbered, it's just that the invoices are behind. We're currently still dealing with December, January time period as far as our invoices. However, the vast majority of those other ones are current, and we are, right where we need to be as far as our paying our bills and so forth to be able to do that. The miscellaneous contractors is everybody, that's the Black and Beach and all the other contractors that worked on the project and have been closed out prior. That's that $23 million number. So they're done and closed out, so I've only put the active ones there. And then the other point I'd like to bring to your detail is a lot of municipal labor has been spent on this project over the years to be able to do that. So you're looking at just about 10.7 million through 2016 that has been capitalized, but it was not given to consultants. It's been given to the municipal employees for their work and efforts through the project. This year, through the first 5 months, we've spent $1.2 million. So you can see that on a monthly basis, we have approximately 250,000, 260 in that ballpark that the municipal labor is running. And I just actually got the June numbers, and we were at 255. So we're right there. That's all the efforts on data. That's all the efforts towards testing. That's all of the things that the employees are allowed to charge to the project or to the SAP that is capitalizable at that point in time. So this is basically the kind of the starting point of our discussion today. This is what's occurred up to this point.
Where's the municipal effort?
It says capitalized payroll. The third line from the row from the bottom, and it talks about this year, and then it talks about all the prior years that led up from 2011 to this year. Okay, so this is kind of our starting point for our discussion of what's been done prior to today.
Any else, some questions from any members? John?
So once it goes live, some of that, we can't capitalize anymore, but some amount of that labor will still need, because they're maintaining the system.
Well, through regular operating budgets going forward, IT will have an operating budget as well, and all the departments, they'll have to be able to do that. I will bring to your attention also which has to be funded through the operating budget and is subject to your appropriation. But we do have two contracts, one that you did in late January and one in March. We call them the HEC and the AMS contracts. One is the hardware support and the other one is the technical support to be able to do that. So currently the municipality is contracted to have a lot of the upkeep on the system performed by SAP through those contracts. And on an annual basis, you would need to budget and appropriate funds to be able to do that. But you are correct. Once you go live, vast majority of the capitalization of things, you would have to, that would end, and you would be paying back in your budget the depreciation on the investment.
Go ahead, John.
So it's $250,000 a month, doing it would be 50,000 a month?
I think what I think it's going to be very difficult to tell because it's not going to be highlighted. They're not going to have codes that they're going to be charged, and it's just going to be, IT, for example, has hired a couple of full-time staff members, and all they'll be their function. And just like we have with PeopleSoft, we have people who are dedicated to that. So I'm sure you could pull those positions out, and you can say that is a SAP kind of a system position. But to go into an individual department, let's say purchasing, and say how much did you spend on SAP maintenance this month, very difficult because they're going to be doing it as a part of their regular jobs.
Forrest?
Yeah, so just going off of John's original question before about the need to train or to stop using the spreadsheets, for example, the workarounds. So that 1.2 million doesn't include, presumably there's also staff time, payroll time for people to get trained on this, right?
That's a very, very good point. So, and actually we can talk about it on the next slide as we get there. We are just about ready to start training. In fact, it starts not next week, but the following week. The GASB rules, the accounting rules for the country, do not allow the actual people who are doing the training and or people who are attending training to be capitalized. So that has to be time that is taken away from somebody's job, that's incorporated from their regular budget. So the development of the training classes is being done by contractors, is being capitalized up on the top part. But in that meaning labor part there, what that really is the people doing the data and doing their testing of the system. But training will not probably be in that particular number. All right, next slide, please. So this is our new one here. We're talking about the funding has been mentioned, and that funding was a total as of when we presented to you in March was only to get us through June 30th. So we were not able to go live on July 2nd as originally planned. We are still now targeting the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. And this is the schedule that we currently have in draft format, but we are certainly working towards this particular draft. I would ask to look at the top two rows. That's our sit testing that we're currently going through right now. It's a 4-week testing and then a 1-week break fix. So we're looking at finishing testing here the end of the week of that week of the 7th. That's as much testing as we're going to be able to be done. I would then take you to the middle group there, which kind of, I think, goes to Mr. Dunbar's comments, that we start training here on the 17th. I think it's been delayed 1 week, but we will start training municipal employees the week of the 24th on the new ESS MSS functionality, which requires all 2,700 or 3,000 employees to be trained, as well as all the individual courses that begin after that. So we are training the employees on the new system here very soon, and that's that middle blue line that you can see carries off all the way into our estimated go live at this point. The line that's been kind of taken the longest is that next brown line that goes into green. That is our data. We had to shorten up our Mach 4 a little bit to be able to hit our estimated October 2nd date. So we have some activities there, but the key one there is if everything goes well with sit testing and we are go, it's that production cutover and data loads. That's where we are. All these data testing and everything we do in these mocks. Those are practice. Those are getting us ready. That's the actual one where we take the data and we will move it into SAP, and that's the data we will be using. That's our actuals. And that's the most critical part of this project that we have after we get through with the testing piece. The last piece there, and I'll just bring it to your attention quickly, I know Zig has talked about his fear that CAPRA reports are being deferred. We have them, we are currently designing them, they're in process. They don't need to be ready until next July when we need to do it, but we are ensuring it was a part of our contract, and there is a consultant who's working through them with the municipal staff, so we are working on those tasks, and they won't, I think he had a fear that they would be deferred post go live. That is not the case. We're going to have those done within the time period that we're shooting for. But this is the current project schedule. And as you can see with the stars there, what that means, if we were able to hit this schedule and we're all good on 9/11, not a date we picked on purpose, just the way it happened to fall, is where the new time entry into the system will take place. So that's where the people will be using Kava and the new entry. That's the only thing, the system has to be ready, but that's the only thing that the system will be using at that point. And then currently, October 2nd is when the rest of the system would be brought online based upon our current schedule, which is tight. It's a very tight timeline, tight schedule to be able to do this. We did have to cut some corners a little bit in some of the areas, but we think that those risks are mitigated. But it is contingent upon us having a successful SIT 3 and break fix that we feel comfortable to be able to hit into October. This is the schedule we're currently working aggressively towards, and we'll know in a month this is going to be fixed.
Forrest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, Alderman, maybe I didn't hear you say it. What does PS poll mean?
All right, that's PeopleSoft poll. I did skip over that. In order to be, as I mentioned, 50% of the data that we have is in PeopleSoft, the other 50% is in the spreadsheet. So that is our actual data we currently have right now, and that's mainly on the HR side, HR payroll side. Philo is basically the spreadsheets. So if we're good to go on 8/14, that's the date we're going to pull all that live information out of PeopleSoft, and that's the start of our information we're going to put into SAP, because that's our live actual information. So PS is PeopleSoft.
John?
Okay, good. So following up on that, so half of it's in these spreadsheets. So you have this production cutover and data loads. It's about 6 weeks. So in that period, you're pulling stuff out
It's
of
7
the
weeks.
spreadsheets, bringing them into SAP.
That's what we've been doing for since September of last year, and those data loads. We've always pulled PeopleSoft data, and we've always been working on all these files. We have a cutover plan that's approaching 1,500 tasks. And several of those tasks are, let's say, get a spreadsheet from a certain entity and load those projects or load those assets, or because those things do not currently reside in PeopleSoft, so we have to get the utilities in they all have their own individual files. And there's a line that says your task is up next, and that means they do that file, and that file happens to be an Excel spreadsheet that they give to the data people and they load into the system. And there's task by task by task, but they can take the big PeopleSoft information download, and then those come in files as well.
So if on 8/28 you tell someone, okay, we're pulling the stuff out of your spreadsheet, they can't touch that again, right?
At that point,
They change that in there?
all the way up to this point, and we've been dealing with and trying to get their formatting and their data as accurate as possible for that exact moment, because we've been practicing for almost a year now. When we say here's your 3 hours on 8/28 between 1 and 4, that's the real file that's being pulled from that, whatever it happens to be, and loaded into SAP. And when we go live, that's the data that's going to be contained.
So, Robert, you gonna be able to handle that? All of a sudden, you can't use that spreadsheet anymore on 8/28, but the guy needs to get in there and change some stuff a week later.
Well, we do have delta loads. I mean, there is a part here because when we pull it on that 8/14, that data is static. So the question's going to happen, what happens between 8/14 and 9/11 when people start using that? So the week before that is a delta load, where they're trying to pick up that difference between when we pull it and when we actually go live in the system. But on the finance files, you're correct. We're only loading, the way we're currently going, we're only loading 2016 finance files up until 10/2. And then you can see the PeopleSoft pull on 10/14, and that's also for the finance side. That'll be through the third quarter of this year. That's when we load 2017 information. I know we're getting into some complex details here, but It's a very complex schedule, and that's why we've been working on this so diligently, and you've heard all the data presentations that have been, and the complexity and difficulties. There is tons and tons of data that's got to be put in there, and it's got to be put in sequence and in correct format. But there are opportunities for us to make up for the difference from when we had to start something and then when that actually goes live.
Any other questions from members? Please continue on.
Okay, so that's the schedule we're currently working towards, and we're going to do our best to try to hit this, but we do have a lot of challenges between now and then. But as I mentioned on the next one here, we do have some assembly requests coming. The funding that we received from you in March took us through June 30th. We now need to secure funding to get us to our next targeted go-live date, which is October 2nd. We will have memos going forward. I know you did this last week for the $5.8 million from the funding source, which comes from the master lease. It will be broken down. At this point in time, you'll see a memo on the 25th for Peloton and SAP realization in those particular amounts. And then the remaining amount, as we've talked about, we've had so much muni resources and so forth on there. We pretty much are out of those particular funds at this point in time. So we're allocating enough funds to handle, because during cutover, that's muni staff. That's every file, every person. So during that 7-week period, along with testing, the muni staff are heavily engaged, 12-hour days and that kind of stuff. So we put in an allocation to ensure that we had funding to be able to cover those particular things. So you will see a Peloton and an SAP memo on the 25th in those amounts for the labor or for the consulting money that needs to have to be allocated between July through September.
And that'll take us up to 81.1.
81.5. A little over 81 million, that's correct.
Which is what our consultant told us 2 years ago would happen.
I believe that's accurate.
He was right on that.
And then my last slide here is just a kind of a summary slide to show you what we're still on target. I know Zig keeps talking about things that are being deferred, but we are still, we're getting, the funds are going towards testing, as we mentioned. That's in there. We have not reduced scope on any modules. They're all still there. Those are the things there. The data, there's a lot of effort and money that needs to go towards the data side. We're starting training here. The classes are being developed, and the training's going to start here, and that fact be in earnest over the next 2.5 months. That's going to be engaged. The new Kava clocks are all installed by the IT department and ready to be turned on. They've all been tested. They're ready. And then as we are still per your request, we're still on target to be able to bring on the vast majority of the open text ECM environment, which is the scanning of documents, and where we're going to get a lot of efficiencies in getting away from paper. And we started with purchasing, accounts payable, and the ER functions. And I believe we're going to be in real good shape being able to do that. So my point here is that from a scope, and you mentioned, as mentioned earlier, CAFR is still going along well. Our scope, from what was initially targeted, we have not had to trim anything. So I feel relatively confident that all of these different streams are going to be in good shape by the time we get ready to go live.
Pete. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So the CAFR that we are talking about is not the 2016 information, it's the 2017
That's
information?
correct, sir. The CAFR that's currently in process that'll go before you will be PeopleSoft information, because it'll be 2016. So it'll be the PeopleSoft reports that are being done on that information. These reports are, and it's just 10, it's not even all the reports that are in the CAFR, it's just the 10 that have been identified as the most important or the most complex. They're developing them right now, but those are the ones that will be used next year. But we want to get them done because they're contracted by SAP to do them. So we want to make sure that they deliver what we've contracted for them to do, rather than kicking the can, so to speak, down the road. So, but yes, there's no worry in the current CAFR that's being developed. These reports have nothing to do with that.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Neil Smith. John?
We're negotiating with SAP to renew their contract. I think you said that's done, and they were hanging up on the issue of whether we can sue them or not. And you refresh
Well,
my
we have
memory.
change orders. We did agree to a change order that provided their continued work on the project through this month. At that point in time, we needed a bridge, so to speak. As I mentioned, June 30th was where the funding ran out, and we weren't able to, because of a variety of factors, not be able to get to your body until the 25th. So the mayor and SAP, we were able to reach a change order to provide a mechanism to have them continue working until we had an opportunity to come before the assessment.
But we're not holding them harmless from a lawsuit, are we?
We
No.
have not.
Good.
Get out of jail free cards.
No, they did that once before on this system, it happened again.
We learned that lesson.
Anything else?
One last comment.
John?
The point I made to them is that the best insulation against liability is performance.
Want to see this system work? Works, we got no complaints. When do you shut PeopleSoft off completely? Yeah, not
We've had a lot of conversations about that, and I take the status that we should keep PeopleSoft around or in use, because remember, it's only going to be used for historical purposes, but as long as we need to ensure that we've got access to the information that is contained in there until we're confident that the SAP system has, what we need to have. Remember, we're only taking 18 months of information out of it, of transactional information and summary information from PeopleSoft into SAP. So if somebody needs to have a detailed thing from 3 years ago, they need to have access to that information for either reporting or whatever analysis needs to be out there. So I would hate for us to commit to a specific date. I think we need to just make sure that we keep it on life support, so to speak, as long as we need to ensure that we have complete access to the information for people to do their jobs.
What's the cost of keeping it running?
That's not something that I have a lot of experience to. I think it's not a huge cost. I think it's a pretty minimal cost, maybe of one or two people to help. It is on the mainframe, where it has the can't think of the name, the appraisal system as well on there. We certainly will want to get rid of the mainframe, but I think I would expect it's going to be a while. Do not expect we go live on SAP and we're going to shut PeopleSoft down the next month. I think from a coverage standpoint, and some of the functionality that they currently have, we're not going to have like Universe and some of those things right away, and it's going to take a little bit of time to provide some ease of use things, some nice to haves that employees can have quick references to that they're used to having in PeopleSoft. So I think it's to our advantage to try to just keep that as long as it makes fiscally sense, as long as it takes for us to make sure that we get SAP to a level that it needs to be to have that assurance. But certainly
What I don't want is it to be a crutch that people don't want to learn SAP because they still have access to PeopleSoft.
I'm sure that they'll take a look at that. But you have to remember, they're not going to be putting transactional information in, so it doesn't take but more than a few days and a few weeks before that system becomes completely unreliable going forward, and people will be using SAP as the primary.
Question of some members. John?
Last point, I had lunch over at the ConocoPhillips building a few days ago, so I talked to people there.
They use SAP there, and VP does as well.
I wanted to get confidence that it was good, and if they all said it's miserable, but they were all, yeah, that's everything we need to do. So ultimately, I think that we have to do this, and ultimately it should work. It's going to be a brutal switch, I'm sure, but I feel better about it, having talked to like half a dozen people there who use it routinely.
Yes, Pete.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So have we started doing some training of employees?
The actual training is going to start a week from Monday. It said the 17th in there, but I spoke with the OCM manager. The 24th, I believe, is what I have heard is the start. It said the 17th on there, but the 24th. And that will be the employee self-service and the manager self-service. There's a lot more functionality for people that's scheduling your vacations, looking at your paychecks, all of those kind of things that changing your beneficiary and everything. And right now, take pieces of paper, phone calls, people, departments, and so forth. The system here has a large new front end on it for us that will allow the employees and the managers to do a lot more themselves. And that critical component, as well as the success of using the system, we want to make sure that that's a really important one, because that's going to hit almost all the employees, and we really want to focus on that. The other trainings will be, specific on how do you process an invoice, how do you do a shopping cart, but this particular one goes across everybody, and that training is going to start a week from Monday.
Okay, great, thank you.
Eric, any questions, sir?
Yes, sir.
Forrest? Anything else, Joey?
That's all I have.
Okay, we're done then. Thanks for being here.